Good evening once again, and welcome to another edition of Kaiso Talk. Of course, it's Wednesday evening, and just to remind you, it's coming to you compliments to Grenville Credit Union. It's a pleasure as always, and so we welcome all our viewers on GBN Television 7 and 11, our friends on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and you, our listeners, on K105 FM. Well, hey, it's Carnival in the air, and of course, there's no carnival with the Kaiso, and we have to talk the talk. We have a very special guest with us this evening. He is the first Calypsonian in Grenada to have won the Calypso Monarch title on 3 consecutive occasions: 1976, 1977, 1978. Took a break, came back in 1984. Yes, indeed, and the man did something in Queen's Park, had everybody scampering in the crowd, not realizing it was part of his presentation and performance, and he won the crown again in 1984. He's with us this evening. We're talking about none other than the man himself, Cecil Belfon, the Flying Turkey. And of course, Val is with us as always. Val, good evening and welcome. How are you going, man?
I'm good. Good evening. Good evening, Grenada. Good evening, P.T. Martini, Cairo Cool. Good evening, GBN 711, and all of the Windward Isles where this program is being heard. Good to be here once again to host another Kaiso Talk. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And of course, our guest, the man himself, Flying Turkey, the man who coined the phrase Spice Mass, and we are in the season of Spice Mass. It is a pleasure to have you, my friend. How are you doing?
Thank you. Not bad at all. Not bad. Great to be here. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you. Thanks to you and Val for inviting me to today's show.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's Kaiso Talk, and you are one of the persons who, over the years we've seen the transformation of Kaiso in Grenada. Moving from to different stages, from one to the other. And so you played a very significant role in that as a young man in the GBS as doing your thing. And of course, we want to hear the stories. So, just in case there are a couple of people who may have heard about Flying Turkey but don't know about the man, take 2 minutes and just tell us about Cecil Belfon, and then we're going to get into the Kaiso Talk.
Well, what can I say? So let me clear up the first fun fact. Is he from Victoria or is he from St. Paul's? he's from both. He's from both.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my roots are in Victoria St. Mark. My grandfather, Sonel Belfon, was from Coast Guard. So I grew up. I started off in St. Mark, and I spent most of my time on Gall Street, right next to Mayfair. So that's for older folks who remember the old wooden buses, Mayfair.
Yes.
At the Hope's residence. But then my grandmother, she go downtown, and this fresh fella from St. Paul's, he wooed her. And then she moved to St. Paul's. So, and the thing with me and my grandmother is we're a package. You can't get one without the other.
Right.
Not even my mother, my grandmother. He's a package. Can't get one without the other. So she moved to St. Paul's. I moved to St. Paul's. And the rest is history. So I grew up in St. Paul's. So that takes care of number one. Number two, how did I get involved in Calypso? I got involved in Calypso because I lived in the GBSS hostel. So your next question is, why would a guy living in St. Paul's be living in GBSS hostel? Because GBSS hostel was traditionally people from the country, people from Carriacou, right? If a fella living so close to town, why he gonna be living in the hostel? Well, the story goes that I was getting into a lot of trouble at St. Paul's. I was getting my hand fast. I was getting into a lot of trouble. I was getting distracted. They say I was a bright kid, but I wasn't paying attention because I was, I don't know. So they put me in the hostel. And that was one of the best things that was ever done. Because in the hostel, I learned camaraderie, I learned teamwork, I learned sports, I learned to get along with others. I was in scouts, cadets, all kinds of. We had a thing called the literary league where we learned debating, and we used to have these Saturday meetings where we do parliamentary procedure, yada yada yada, and so on. And as a result of the Hostel Literary League, we used to have an extracurricular activity, and we decided that we're gonna sing Calypso. What influenced us? What influenced us was the fact that one of the tents of the day had moved to CSA, which is now Public Workers Union. So CSA was that building, of course, right, next to PWU, right? It was called CSA at the time. Civil Servants Association, it was called at the time. That's built on a place that we used to swim called the Spout. I'm taking it way back. You asked me to take it way back.
Okay, I've heard some of those.
Right. So back in the day in GBSS, there was a place called the Spout and there was a place called Dry Dock. So after you play football or cricket, you went over, and the non-swimmers went to the Spout because that was a shallow water. That's just adjacent to the yacht club. Mm-hmm. And the better swimmers went to Dry Dock. So anyway, so what happened is that in those days you had the old fire stick tent, and you had Eagle, Darky, and Melody. They had a tent. Eagle had a tent, Pirate and them guys had a tent. One tent used to be resident in the drill yard, and one tent used to be off of Green Bridge, which is no more, by close to the stadium.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And one of the tents moved to CSA, as it was known at the time. And we used to sit in the hostel, and we used to listen to them. We used to listen to Pirate and Eagle and them guys singing. And then fellas start saying, same old, we could do better than that, right? Mm-hmm. And what brought that comment was there used to be a sort of predictable drone in Calypso at that time. It used to go like, come down to the island, come down to the gold, what? We have the sun and die, da 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 da. Da 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 day. Da 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 day. It was predictable.
Right.
You could almost finish any Calypso. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It always used to be about a white woman that come down to Grenada and she see the pan and she's a steal, and you tell her wine so, right? I'm not knocking it, but that was the sort of one of the limitations of creativity.
Well, that was the era.
But it was all over the Caribbean, because it was in Trinidad, because Kitchener did the same thing. Some people did it more creatively, like Short Shirt. One of the classics was Short Shirt in Antigua with Taurus Lego.
Taurus Lego,
Right, it was the same thing, right? So somebody say, yeah, we can do better than that, and somebody challenge us, right? So Timpo and I decide we'll give it a shot. So we asked the Hostel Literary League if they could put on a Calypso competition. So they put on the competition. So the very first year, there was a guy named J Bull. His name was Calvin Fletcher from Guelph. He won. Timpo came second, I came third. Then J Bull graduated. And the following year, Timpo came first. Timpo won, I came second. A new guy came third. And the third year, when Timpo left, I won. So we just shifted up.
Right.
So here now, in them days, let me tell you this. I had to go out to normal English for this one. In them days, first prize was a bottle of alcohol.
What?
No, for real.
No, hold on, you missed out something. Alcolado Glacial, but you had to say the full thing.
Right? Second prize used to be, what was that soap? We had a favorite soap we used to use.
Carbolic?
And third prize. No, not Cabolic, man.
Right.
It's a nice soap. A nice soap.
Maybe Lux.
White ways and cucumber.
You had Lux and you had them palm olive, you know?
No.
It was white ways and cucumber. The cucumber, it was a nice smelling soap.
It was a nice, yeah. And third was, the funny thing is that what I put for the third prize was the most practical because that was polish. Because in them days you had to polish your shoe to go to school.
Okay, all right.
So if you come third and you get a nugget shoe polish, you win.
You're right.
So, because you have to polish your shoe to go to school, you know, Daddy makes good HD Batiste was the headmaster in them days. You can play around with shoes that wasn't shining. So that was it. That was where we started. We had no instruments, so we used to have guys put in cigarette paper on comb.
Right.
to do the brass and so on. And GBSS had, you know, we had the French windows from the barracks.
Yeah.
Fellas used to break off them thing for the windows and so on to make their bass and their guitar and so on. Because no, I'm not making this up. I remember a guy named Abelard Mirai. He was from Mount Carmel. He was a bass man. Fellas used to hire him, you know. No, Abelard had a deep voice. He used to give you a boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom. He was watch you see how fellas running after BC nowadays? They used to run after Abelard. What's funny is he's actually he's in the States somewhere. I always try to connect with him. But you had guys doing that kind of thing, you know. And then we brought it to the school. We brought it to GBSS. By that time, Timpo had left, J-Bull had left. And so the first year they brought it to the GBSS, I won. And one of the unique things about winning in GBSS that year was a new musician had come back on the scene. His name was Eugene Gittins.
Right.
And yes, and Eugene Gittins brought to Grenada something called a Moog synthesizer, right? And I refer to it as something called a Moog synthesizer because it was a mystery piece of equipment.
Right.
Now remember those were the days when bands going out to play, they used to have a big board bus, and the organ, 4 fellas used to have to lift the organ and put it in the high seat, right?
Right. Yeah.
So here comes this guy. Here comes Eugene Gittins, fresh out of Boston with his music degree and so on, with this Moog synthesizer. We don't even know what to call it. Some people call it a Moog, some call it a synthesizer because we don't know. It's like when you put some sellotape in front of a person and they just call it Scotch tape because we don't know the brand.
Right.
So we didn't know whether the name of it was a Moog or whether it was a synthesizer. It turns out it was a synthesizer. The model was Moog. And Eugene played that for me in GBSS. Him and another guy called Johnny Branch. I think it was Johnny Branch from Archibald Avenue. So that's the first year I had actual music, live music.
Right.
And so I won that, and the rest is history. I'm going to fast forward, and then I'm going to shut up. The next time I went on a stage was with Daki and them by Greenbridge. And I want to give credit to Grandpa Chain for that. Because Grandpa Chain was the one that came to me one day and say, hey, I'm looking for some fellas to sing Calypso. I say, well, I want to sing Calypso.
Right.
He say, I talked to Daki, and Daki say, come down for a meeting. When we go down by the meeting, I'm going to fast forward now. When we go down to the meeting, Daki tell us, in order to sing, we had to first build a tent.
What if you had tent, you really go sing?
No, this is no lie. In them days, he used to physically build the tent. It's not like now we walk into Deluxe or you walk into Trade Center.
Right.
He used to physically build the thing. So on the left side, if you're facing towards the wharf, right, to go to the western side, on the left side, the tent was right there, and anybody who listened to this could chime in. So we spent 3 days building the tent. So you actually put the sand in the buckets, and you put the thing, and you put the rafters, and you pull tarpaulin, which is really the tent, over it, and so on. We did all of that, and every time while we're building the tent, we keep asking, when is rehearsal? And he's like, don't worry, man, build the tent. Long story short, we ain't get a rehearsal. And the night of the show, we turn up, And then Daki tell us, well, y'all in rehearsal, y'all sing.
Daki.
So that is phase one. Over to you. I don't want to hog the show.
No, listen, anything just to get nice. You want to know what after that. You can't just drop the story in the middle. So all you ain't get to sing. What happened after that?
Well, the second night, he tell us come back to a rehearsal. When we went to the rehearsal, we sit down with about 3 fellas. And then they tell us, and that is something that irks me up to this day. If I come to a rehearsal and everybody's not there, I get very, I don't know if it's PTSD from that time, but don't let me come to a rehearsal and tell me the man that playing the guitar, just holding on for the night, he is not going to be playing on the night. You understand?
Right.
No, I mean, I'm actually getting angry just thinking about it, right? Because that's done a lot, and it needs to stop. Okay? If you're playing, you have to be at the rehearsal.
Yes, of course.
You can't send a man to jam your chords. Okay? And that was done a lot, and that was a big injustice. So you go to the rehearsal, and 3 of the guys that played, when you try to correct them, they're telling you, don't worry, I just jamming. I won't be playing on the night. And that's real. That's real. And I'm inviting any artist listening to this to call in and testify. You know, I could form a support group on this single item that, because collectively it kept us back for so long. The first time I actually went on the stage, I'm on the side of the stage, and a man coming and he asked me, give me a thing. I was like, what do you mean give me a thing? You're supposed to have that figured out. You're supposed to know my beat per minute. You're supposed to know the time. No, a guy running it. People out there clapping, coming on stage, and a man coming and tell you, how we go? Hey, give me a thing. Blah, blah, blah. Don't worry. We go catch you. Just start. We go catch you.
Just go.
Yeah. Let me tell you, we have come a long way. Yeah. So to fast forward, we decided it was actually Chain, myself, and another artist called Jaguar. The 3 of us from St. Paul's, right? But Grandpa Chain has to get the credit, because without him, I would not have gotten started. The following year, 1976, Chain has to take the credit. He approached Norman D'Souza, who was then the member of parliament for St. George Southeast. Right. And he told him, hey, you know, we want some help. We want to start something and so on. And Norman said, yeah, well, okay, if, you know, get some fellas and we run something. So Chain came, he recruited me, and I said, yeah, let's get some guys. So we had guys like, we had Stingray, we had a guy named Brownlee, we had a guy named R.C., we had a guy named Kixie. Don't ask me how they came up with their names, but those are their names, right? And we started this Southeast Brigade. So 1 week before we were supposed to open, the place burned down. Okay, so I kind of understood and learned some things about that later on, but that's probably, you know, I don't know. It's speculative.
Right.
We were so dejected because we were excited. Oh, there was a guy named Bushti, Nathaniel Granger. I remember Nathaniel. I'm sorry if I forget anybody. We had a guy named Brownlee was. Remember to tell you a story about Brownlee, but that's a whole other episode. Because Brownlee came to New York and did a show later on with Derek Ventu. So anyway, the place burned down.
Right.
And we were dejected. And Norman D'Souza said, look, you know what? You guys look like you're really disappointed. I'll make this happen. Now, this was where the St. Paul's Community Center is right now, right?
Right. Oh, that's what the tent was. Right.
Yeah, that was the original tent, yeah. So I actually performed there last year after all these years, and I was reminding people that this was where it started. That was where it started.
That's it, right.
With the St. Paul's festival. So Mr. D'Souza said, I'm going to make this happen. So he got the fire brigade to come and they washed down the place and so on. That was before the community center, so visualize it. It used to be a house. I think the Brathwaites used to live there one time. So the walls stood up. So they take the burnout galvanized and they put it back up on top of the walls. And there were some companies, I don't want to call companies' name on the air because I can't remember who, but there were some generous companies that donated their lumber for us to make the seats. So the seats were like, long stretches of lumber, right? And the tent was up and running in time. We lost a couple of days. And then we nicknamed, we changed it. The MC, the MC was Nero. Nero from, I'll tell you in a while. I can't remember. Somewhere down on the lowlands there. Woburn, I think Nero is from Woburn. So I can't remember who this, but we christened the place the Old Bundung from Southeast. We changed the name to the Old Bundung. And I went on to win the crown. I went on to win the 10th crown and then the national crown from there.
Right. Yeah, because in those days, the tents used to have their competition. In fact, we spoke about that some time ago. Val, was it last week we spoke about that with the tent competitions and the parish competitions and things like that. So it started a while back, and we've lost these things now. Turkey. We don't have these kind of competitions anymore.
Yes, in those days you had your village or you had your tent competition. So we would have our competition. Bolyorama would have their competition. Moss was not. I don't think Moss was out that year.
Yeah, no, Moss wasn't out yet.
Yeah, but everybody would have your. That was your first. That was your first trip. You had to win your crown. You had to win your local crown. And that gave you the impetus. One of the things that used to happen in those days was that when you moved to Queen's Park, you used to move with the entire entourage, the entire village. I can't tell you how many times the whole of St. Paul's full Queen's Park, Queen's Park was a smaller stadium at that, smaller grandstand at that time. St. Paul's moved en masse, people would cook food and hire buses and everything, because they're going down to defend Turkey. And that was a double edge, because on the one hand, it put a lot of pressure on me to win. But on the other hand, it put a lot of support behind me to win. Right. So St. Paul's people, they were the wind beneath my wing, you see? So they made, because I will tell you this, when I went out the first year, I went out with the attitude of, if I'm not validated, I'm done. if I go out there and I get 2 boo, I'm done with that. Because what happened is, at every stage you think that's your max, right? And then later on in life you learn that your maximum is the horizon, that you keep going, because there's no maximum. Right. So in those days, so I came third in GBSS and that was it. I'm good. Then I came, in the hostel. Then I came second and, a new maximum. Then I won, a new maximum. Won in GBSS, new maximum. No way I'm going to make it on the national stage, okay? Now, I was, on the national stage, I was looking at guys like Lord Slim and Gold Dust and Unlucky and and Darky and Melody and Eagle and Pirate and
Defender was also around at the time.
Defender, Lady Beginner, and I'm like, I can't touch these people. You see what I mean? I can't touch these people. But then later on, as you start winning, you start understanding that your maximum is infinity. And your maximum is constrained only by your attitude and what you think you could win. It don't mean you're going to win, but you have to have the attitude.
One quick question before Val come in. How did you come up with the name Flying Turkey?
Well, the name was thrown upon me. I didn't I didn't make the name. The name was bestowed upon me. And in model school, St. Paul's Model School, right? So we had this game where, when the teacher not there, you play a game. So you open my atlas and you say, show me a country, show me Spain, and you start counting, right? And fellas searching for Spain.
Right, yeah.
Right, and I was figuring out how to find some place that nobody would find. And then I stumbled on a country called Turkey, and I was like, so I said, find Turkey, and everybody started laughing, but I start counting. While I'm laughing, I counting, you know. So I count and I said, wait, now you serious? And they start searching for Turkey. And I won the game, and everybody get kind of pissed with me for winning the game. They figure, well, like a cheat. I was like, no, it's a country named Turkey. I told you, right? So they start calling me Turkey.
Right.
So I said, all right, well, so that was my nickname. So, but when I went into Calypso, one of the things, when I went into National Calypso, one of the things is that I dared to be different. So from the day I walked into this, I wanted to be different. And the first thing I did to be different was I said, I don't want to be Lord Almighty, because every other Calypsonian was Lord Almighty.
Yeah.
So I tried to find something different. And I chose Flying Turkey because it was a contradiction, because unbeknownst to me, okay, at that time I thought, well, turkeys can't fly, so let me throw out something.
You have never seen a turkey fly.
You never see a turkey fly.
And then later on, reading a National Geographic, remember, we didn't have the internet and all that.
Yeah. It was by that big magazine. Yes.
Google and ChatGPT. One day I'm reading a National Geographic, and they talk about this turkey in some part of Africa that flies. I'm like, shoots, I had that backwards all the time, because I never knew a turkey could fly. So. But I was insistent that I didn't want to be Lord Turkey. I had to keep Turkey because it was convenient.
Right.
Because the whole village at that time, right? So people in St. Paul's, I grew up not as Cecil, I grew up as Ken. Right? That's my home name. Ken or Kenny, right? In school. And then since the name Turkey came, I came with a little ridicule too, you know. I can't tell this on this show, but it came with teasing, you know. It came with teasing, and so on. And then I used to be angry because kids, you know, you don't take teasing too well. And then I walked into it, and that's when I realized that the easiest way for teasing to go away is just to leave it alone and agree with it.
Just to like it. Just to like it. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
Because once you claim it, you know, the thing.
Yeah, so, that's it.
They lose interest.
So when I went into Calypso, so Chain said, well, Chain was already known as Chain, so he said he gonna keep Chain. He just inherited Grandpa Chain a couple of years ago, right? Rightly so, because he has done a lot. We'll talk about one of his songs called Savage a little later on.
Yeah.
So, and also on the question of double entendre, we're going to talk about one of his songs called Yard of Ass, like yard of donkeys, like donkeys in a yard. Yard of Ass. That one is not recorded, so that's why I'm going to tell you more about it now. But I decided, you know, I don't want to be Lord everybody, because I think he was Mighty Chain at the time. And Jaguar, the other guy who started this, he was Mighty Jaguar. We had Mighty Bush T. We had Lord Assy. We had Lord Kixie, Lord Darky, you know, and so on. Everybody was and said, nah, I want to be different. I want to do things differently. So I went with Flying. So that's it in a nutshell. Sorry for rambling like this.
Well, yes, I had to chime in. I mean, so Turkey, I think you have set a number of precedents. I don't know whether you are aware of it, but even from this program, I've heard that not only now I heard the name was definitely a movement away, a divergence away from the Lord and the mighty and so on, but your presence also inspired a number of younger people. So you would tell me whether you understood that or whether it came to you later on, that in coming on the scene and winning, you sort of created a new tradition away from the older bards who people saw as Calypsonians as shiftless, vagabond, rum drinking, you know. So here comes this young fella, I think a black bank clerk or something, singing calypso and winning, so that with your village following you and others, you made calypso a lot more acceptable to younger generations. Did you understand that then, or that came to you later?
Right.
No, I understood that. Very good question. I understood it clearly, and I suffered. I suffered while I was jubilant. I'll tell you why. Because at that time I worked at Royal Bank of Canada. Those were the days when it sounds kind of strange to talk about blacks in Grenada, when we're predominantly black, but that was a time when blacks, quote unquote, were about probably 10% of the bank population.
So much?
If that much, yeah. I remember my compatriots and I want to pay some respect to Valerie Charles. She was the one that brought me in, and I want to, pay her deep respects. And I apologize for calling names, but I think it's appropriate. It's
definitely. Yeah.
Once it's not libelous, it's all right.
Yeah.
No. Far from libelous. These are good. These are angels. Val Charles is now an angel. So make sure, all the best. And we had people like Val Blackburn, we had Oswald Pele Dabo, we had, I remember Mitch, a couple of people, Mary Aline, a couple of people in Royal Bank, this and that. But we were few. So the thing is, it posed a bit of a contradiction, right? That when I started singing calypso, there was a tenseness in the bank. There was a tenseness. And my manager is a guy called De Silva, Mr. De Silva. He was Guyanese. And we butt heads every day. I mean, I don't even know how they kept paying that bank for so long. Because I was like a walking problem for that bank. Except for the fact that I had the people on my side. So, people would walk into that bank and say, I have a check for $20 or $30. And they would ask them some stupid question like, you know anybody at the bank? You have ID? All we know is we can't cash your $30 check, right? And I would look at the person and I would call them aside and say, what's your story? And they would say, yeah, look, man, I'm a farmer. I get this like a check for my little cocoa bonus, my nutmeg bonus. I come all the way from so and so, and I just want, I don't know nobody here. I have my little check.
Yeah.
But we had a sort of rule, sort of custom in the bank that if a clerk endorses the check, it's good to go, but the liability is on the clerk, right? And like, all right, you, this guy have a check for $30. Yeah, my check account could afford it. I just sign it and tell the guy, I endorse it. You go,
right.
Cash your check, and you gone, right? So, I used to be doing that kind of thing. So sometimes people come in the bank with stories, and they would just straight out say, I want to speak to the guy over there. They'll just wait. Because my attitude was, once you come to the bank, you need service. And once I'm here, I go listen to your story and I'll give you service. I met a guy on way after I left the bank a lot of years later. A guy pulled up to me one time and he's like, you so and so. I was like, yeah. I don't know if it's a bill collector, he about to shoot me or whatever. And he said, thank you so much for what you did back in the time. I have no memory of it, and that sort of thing. So that was one. So people came to the bank, they identified with. I'm not trying to say I'm the only one, but the thing is, I was front facing because I used to be at the counter. So right. So just to be clear, I'm not here trying to paint myself as any hero. But when I went into Calypso, there was a tension with the manager, you know, and he's like, and he asked me about it, but he couldn't come straight, you know. I said, yeah, sing Calypso, so what? It's your culture, blah, 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 blah. But here's the hypocrisy. The minute I win the crown and the trophy was displayed in the bank window. You understand? Right on the foot of where Gospo used to call yes. The minute I win the crown, all the tension went away. Why? Because capitalism understands. So right away they saw the value.
Free advertising.
Calling people to that bank because the Calypso King worked here.
Right.
Yeah.
So they had the trophy and everything in the window. And people used to come in and open savings accounts. People used to come in and get autographs. And then they started giving me liberty. So the following year, I milk it. I milk it like a pregnant goat. I say, okay, I need time off for rehearsals. Yeah, I need to do this. And then the biggest thing was trying to get me to come to work on a Carnival Tuesday, because in them days he used to have to work.
Yeah, half day
Carnival Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
By the time I get sober on a Tuesday, it's time to leave the bank. So I made it to the bank one Tuesday. I walked in and I went straight to the lunchroom, and I told them this is the best I could do. I make it to the lunchroom. I sit down in the lunchroom till the bank closes and I go home. So it was a good ride. But anyway, to get back, I like to interject humor, but, to make the points. But the point is that I think what it did was, I was very conscious of it, and what it did, to Val's question, is that it validated the fact that we did not have to have that line. Pan suffered even worse than Calypso, right? Because in the days of Pan, you had to be a vagabond, a this, a that, a that, a that. Ironically, I wrote a song for Comancheros this year for Pan that speaks about the same thing, about my grandmother admonishing me not to follow them Steelman boys, come and do my work, you see? So I feel so good now when I see Pan in school, Pan in the church, and so on, It's a glorious musical instrument. And we better embrace it quick, because the Japanese, they're already trying to go with it, if not gone with it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So one other thing, I just want us to recognize, while today is July the 9th,
Sparrow's birthday,
and we're doing this program with you, Turkey, but it's also Sparrow's birthday.
Yeah.
Yes, 90,
and,
right?
I think Valentino's birthday was a couple of days ago on the 6th.
Yeah.
So we have two Grenadian guys who made their mark in Trinidad and the world.
Yes.
And from Grenada.
Yeah.
So I want us to recognize that. While we are talking to one of the legends of Calypso in Grenada,
yes.
who stayed resident in Grenada and so on for a long time.
Yes. Since you mentioned that, I just want to give some kudos to William Monroe, because and in the context of, as you mentioned, Valentino, because William Monroe was responsible for me being able to perform in Trinidad and expand my horizon at Kingdom of the Wizards, 121 Henry Street.
Right.
I can't remember if it's And what triggered it was that was the year that Valentino had Stay Up Zimbabwe, one of his biggest songs. Happy birthday, Val. Yeah, happy birthday. He has always treated me so well. Yeah, him and his dear wife Peggy, they have always been very good to me. I appreciate them.
Right. So Turkey, as I said, you won 76, 77, 78. Set a new trend, I say people now could. You said that the Calypsonian, the Pan men had a tougher road to hoe, but they are seeing the same. They come from the same space.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And in Trinidad, we know that there were in the very early periods, I guess 40s, 50s, there were signs that says, Calypsonians and dogs not allowed in certain spaces. So apart from the Pan Man being seen as vagabond, Calypsonian was no different in terms of being a shiftless character and so on. And your presence, so circular that I say in Grenada, set new trends where even today, you know, people can see them differently. You said you recognize that from early. It was a weight on your shoulder because the whole of St. Paul, you say, coming down in the stadium to see the whole village, right? And you had to deal with all of that. How, you know, what made you probably stay away after 3 victories? Why not go for the 4th one time? What happened?
I sort of bended the public pressure, I would say. I sort of bended the public pressure because here's the thing about Grenada, and we do it up to this day. Grenada loves to support their underdog. And they love to support something that's new. And those same people have the same energy that they love to pull you back down when you start.
Oh, definitely, yeah. But that's a Caribbean thing. That's a Caribbean thing.
And that's tragic.
Yeah.
And after 3 years, I kind of sort of had enough. And I said, you know what? There are other things. Been there, done that. Let me move on. In 84, I came back, you know, just to prove a point. I came back actually on a bet of sorts. I came back. And I said, okay, let me pack it up. And up to this day, sometimes people say to me, you know, go back in competition, go back in competition. But then I have to tell them, you know, time, you know, I think there is a philosopher called Heracles that says, no man stands in the same river twice. Because it's not the same
always
man.
moving.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the same man and it's not the same river. You know? So people have to understand that. So am I still contributing? Yes. Do I still love the art form? Yes. But it's not my time anymore, you know? But it was good while it lasted, and I pray with thanks. I give thanks that I was able to make a mark. Some people recognize it, some people choose to recognize it. Because there are some people who like to start history where it suits them. Yeah. You see? Some people like to start the right history at the point where it's convenient for them. You see? I'm always careful to give, you know, give props to the shoulders that we stand on.
Oh, yeah.
I like to do things in a humorous way. So when I give you the stories about the darkies and the melodies and so on, you know, it's still a backhanded compliment to the fact that that we stand on their shoulders, and the shoulders of those, you know, before them, the Carusos and the whoever's, you know. Because there's some people who just kind of feel that the world started with them. The world started when they started it. They started it. Yeah. But the truth is, if you a easy way to test that, take a lot of songs, look at the melodies, look at the ideas, and everything, right? And then roll back. Now, one of the things I do when I write, and I still write a lot, one of the things I write, sometimes when I write a song and it sounds too good, I get scared. Why? Because, like, wow, this song ain't too good. Maybe there's something subliminal that I'm copying from somebody that I liked. And a lot of times I would put a song on ice. And I would wait and wait and wait and wait. And then one day I might hear a hook line and I was like, oh, crap. That's this guy's hook line. I need to change that.
Right.
Because nothing is original. We all build on things, So I remember one time there's a maypole in St. Paul's, right, in the Wild Indian in Belle Plaine, right? And they used to sing this song. And I decided to write this song, and I wrote the song, you know, on the what they were singing, you know. And then I realized that Sparrow had already sang it. and I just had to put an X on it. It was like something to do with saving money. I can't remember what it is right now. Put something aside. You think that. Put something aside. So the Maypole, they were from Belle Plaine. That's Miss Teresa and them from Belle Plaine. So from the time I was small, we used to have our own carnival in St. Paul's, you know. We used to have, St. Paul's used to have a containerized carnival. From the crossroad down to Miss Lucy's shop, down Lavery there. Of course, Miss Lucy turned out to be my mother-in-law, but that's a whole. She wasn't at the time.
But let me. I just want to go back to the question that Val had asked. You know, like why after 3 years? So it was 76, 77, 78, and then in 79, apart from 3 years, and so we had the revolution, March 13th, and there was no carnival in 79. Did that impact your Kaiso career in any way?
Yes. I had changed at that time to writing for others. I had strong views on the revolution. And the thing is this, that culture, we are messengers. Calypsonians are messengers, right? And sometimes you want to balance how strong is your internal message versus the other messages, right? And so on. So I had changed around to, there's a thing called the competition or the Festival of the Revolution, something. And so Timpo and I went. Yes. So Timpo and I won, Timpo came second. And Timpo and I had a chat. And then we both decided, we would take a break and so on. Because Timpo and I had started off in the hostel. So Timpo and I had what people thought was a public rivalry. But it was a rivalry that we allowed. But privately, Timpo, myself, Don Charles, we were all close. And we used to use the rivalry for tent clashes between We Tent, which we didn't talk about, and Calypso Castle later on. So I decided, let me take a break and I will do more writing. So I did write for some people. And then 84, I got a bet. And they say, well, you used to like the PRG. The PRG not there anymore. Let me see if you could win under a different government. And it's like, well, first of all, that shouldn't be an issue. Because it's supposed to be based on culture. It's supposed to be based on the competitiveness. So I said, all right, let's do it. And I wrote Byron and another song, and I went in and I won. And afterwards I said, okay, guys, this is it. I need to get on to a career. I need to do something else. I need to try something else, And so I left it alone for a while. But what I do realize is that you can't stop writing and you can't stop wanting to. No. But competition itself, in the formal sense of competition, no, that's not in the cards. Yeah, that was the end of that. Yeah.
Val, anything else before we?
I don't think it's possible to just glide over that period of the PRG. Too important a period. How does the period affect, or you see that in terms of your writing and what you have to communicate, and of course all the dreams that were part of it. I think you were partial to the PRG and its movement. How has that period now affects you when you see Grenada and in your writing and so on? What have you taken away from that period?
And Turkey, before you answer, I just want to add something here so you could tie in all of that. So after the revolution in 80, so there was no carnival in 79. In 80 we had Survivor who came out and won the crown. Then 81 your colleague Timpo, he won, and then we started to see a change in the music. By then, by 78, 80, the things started to change, and the castle came on, and we had the African temple, then the Blackwood tent, and then we had African Teller, then we had Lady Cinti, the first female Calypso monarch. And you've been out and looking in and seeing all of that. Maybe you could tie in your thoughts on that as well, together with what Val has asked.
Well, the thing is I was out but not out, in the sense that so back to Val in 1980, I think is when Calypso Castle came in, right?
Yeah.
Right, 1980 Calypso Castle came in, and they were forced to reckon with. Let me tell you, the biggest competitor, the biggest adversary, inverted commas, I've ever come up against in terms of tents was Calypso Castle. Okay? Because every now and then you have an inflection point. So when I came in, so in 76, there was I created an inflection point. One of the biggest things I did and I'm coming back to you, Val. One of the biggest things I did in 1976 was to revolutionize presentation and showmanship. Okay? Because I was tired of the mundane, predictable, two guys on stage with a placard. Right? When I mentioned William Monroe, so I did a year in Trinidad, and I really understood. I used to stay backstage and study. Composer was the
MC,
the backstage man. Well, he was a backstage manager and MC, right? One of the first things I realized in Trinidad is that they never printed a program. The program used to be on a chalkboard, and then I understood why, because he would look at the mood. Yeah, he would look at the mood of the program, and he would just change the program, the mood of the crowd. Sorry, and he would just change. So sometimes he would come upstairs. We had these resting places upstairs. He would come and say, "Boy, them fellas down there. There's a guy called Fluke, Lord Fluke." Right?
Adam and Eve.
Yeah. With your right hand in the air like a tower, and every man shouting, "Power, power, power."
Yeah. So composer would come and say, "Fluke, I find them people, they look like they're stressing, they're a little bored. So I'm moving you up. You go next. Go and wake them up," and so on. And I learned that. The issue of having a flexible program. I also learned the value of the fact that the artist is a commodity, and you can't walk through the street with a jeans and a shirt and then go on stage in the same jeans and shirt that people see you walk up to the tent with, right? So there used to be a time in Grenada when you would go to tents, and guys they would call a guy on stage, and he would be by the bar having a drink in his shirt and pants, right? And they say, "Hey, so and so, they're calling you." I don't want to call names to indict anybody, but if you feel like some gospel juice, that's fine. But they'll call a guy off stage, and he'll just run on stage and pick up the mic, and that was part for the course. That was normal. I said, no, that can't be normal. So when I came back to Grenada, I took all the notes from Trinidad. I said, I'm implementing these. This was no longer the old Bandung. We had now formed We Tent, and I was in charge of We Tent, right? So I said to guys, there's going to be a new rule here. You have to go to your tailor and you have to get a suit made. You cannot come on stage with the same clothes. I don't want to see you walking up here in a brown pants and a green jersey and then see you on stage. You can't do that. You have to have your clothes, get a clothes bag. You have to have a separate costume to go on stage. That's number one. Number two, you cannot mingle with the crowd once the show starts. You have to be backstage. Right? So backstage, everybody wanted liquor, babash, and so on. So we had a runner. So you're the runner. Anybody want anything? You go to the bar, you buy it, you bring it back. Artists cannot commingle with the crowd. We are the product. Okay? So I brought those kinds of things. When Calypso Castle came, they took that to a new level. Calypso Castle was an elite outfit. I mean, all kudos to Don Charles and his crew. Don and I used to be on the phones in the day, you know, like just figuring out stuff. So a rivalry came about that we didn't create, and we decided to exploit it. So there used to be the Weekend versus Calypso Castle, and we used to love that. In those days, they used to come down. It used to be a place where the yacht club is now called Clancy Island. Right? So they used to play. So we used to compare our calendars. So when they go to Clancy Island, when we want to go to Deluxe, they would say, okay, Don would say, well, come up to Deluxe on the so-and-so of the month. We're going to go down Clancy Island. So unless we were clashing, we never appeared in the same
era. Okay,
space.
Okay.
So that we both would have full houses, you know, and so on. So to go back to Val's, during the period of the revolution, I wrote a lot of progressive songs. Ironically, one of the songs I wrote in that time, I'm actually redoing it now with Leston Paul in Trinidad. It's a song called Writing on the Wall. And that song was written in that period. And that was a period when the USSR, in fact, I had to update some lines because that song was talking about the Iraq-Iran war. It was referring to Falklands or Malvinas, which is the time when England, right? So you know that was 1983, 82 or somewhere around there, right?
Yeah.
That's one. But I did a lot more writing in that period than performing because I wanted to stay back. I wanted to learn. I wanted to understand. But I did a lot of writing. One of the iconic songs from that period was Innocent Blood. Yeah. Which was my first foray into reggae with a local talent called Scratch. And we actually did that song after the unfortunate event in Queen's Park.
Yeah, June 19th,
It was June 19th, that's right. And I was so moved by that I wrote that song. And when I discussed it with Don, he said, let's record it. So that was one of the first songs that Don recorded. He had his studio downstairs his house.
Also, that's there we go. I didn't even know that. All right.
Yeah,
so that was done there. Okay.
That's one of the first songs. When I discussed that, Don and I, we used to talk every day. We used to. There's nothing no idea Don had. He didn't run by me and vice versa. So when I told him, he said, "Come up, let's record it." I'll tell you a quick story about that song. We went in the studio, and we had Ras Baga Branch. So Baga was playing on that song. And then we had I think Beats was playing on that song. Leon, all the Charles brothers, they played on that. And then we had a guy from St. David. He dropped in the studio. Bertrand was his name. Bertrand was a saxophonist, right? Bertrand, he just dropped in the studio to say hello, and he heard the track, and he say, "I want to be on that." And I said, "Well, yeah, but we going and put on the track right now." So he said, "Well, my saxophone said pivots, but I want to be on that." So well, how are we gonna do that? We're gonna put on the track. He said, "No, I want to be on that." And he said, "I could be back in half an hour." So I thought, "You can ride from here to St. Davis and back in half an hour." He said, "Yeah, I want to be on that." That's Chateau, Bertrand Chateau. May he rest in peace. And Bertrand Road, we say, okay, Bertrand want to be on the recording, and we can wait. And Bertrand rode his bike to St. David's, and he got his saxophone. He came back, and he played on the session. So
lovely.
But there was a thing about that era that it wasn't about money. And I'm not saying that to offhandedly knock anybody who makes it about money today, because this is a different era. And musicians need to be paid. And musicians have bills too, and I respect musicians. Yeah. So we're not saying that. But we're just saying that at that time, but things were different, because remember, in them days, Nawasa didn't have meters. So the point being that bills were lower.
Yeah.
A bus from Tongue to St. Paul's was 75 cents or $1. So yeah, it's a different time. But he just felt like I love this and I want to be in on it. So after I will confess that my writings during the revolution were pro-revolution. I will confess that. In 1984, that was the first time I sang some lines that had some probes in it. There was a song called Curious Children, where I started probing some questions, because some people like me saw a lot of contradictions after the fact, and that's another program, but that's how it is, So I hope that sort of answers the question. Yeah.
I want you to, I think you are aware of, let's say, Stalin's schism.
Yeah.
Are you aware?
Yes.
Right. That came out after that period. And I've also seen that such periods as Trinidad in 1970 can either inspire, like it did Valentino, that create a whole canon of really excellent songs. And for some people like Lord Superior, who became very kind of didactic and so on, the calypsos became wordy and stiff, because you want to speak for it, but you're not necessarily creating. You become preachy.
Yeah.
So it can damage you, and I'm not saying you went in that direction, but I'm saying that those periods are always very uncertain periods for some people. So I mentioned Stalin because he is more reflective of what happened while people were giving a lot of service and meaningful opinions about it. The crash of it wounded a lot of progressive people throughout the Caribbean. And I don't know whether we have survived that since.
It's I'll tell you what, Grenada went into a very cautious mode after that, because I still believe up to this day that the average Grenadian just wants good for Grenada. And I stand up to this day that the average person just wants nationalism, not at the expense of regionalism, but nationalism and Grenadianism. I think we just want to do better. The ism and schism has no place in our culture. It was not a fit. And I think that's where the thing went off the rails, because the only ism that Grenadians ultimately want to know is kindism, villagism. If you want to coin villagism and kindism and share with your neighborism, Grenadians could go for that, okay? But when you get into these scientific, definitions of the isms and schisms, I think Stalin is right, and I support him there,
Well, he won. He won the ground. I mean, of course.
Yeah.
It was a prize-winning selection.
The thing with these political movements of the time, because again, we have to keep everything in context. In context, this was the era of the Cold War, of the USSR. So-called capitalism versus communism, and this and that and that and that. But the truth is, the average Grenadian grows up in what you call organic socialism, and we don't need an external socialism. The average Grenadian who grows up and says, my corn come in real good this year, but I ain't have yam, and your yam come in real good, and that fella down there have a set of fowl, and bring this to your neighbor. And as a child, I remember my grandmother sending me, drop so and so by Miss So and so, drop a hand of fig by Mr. So and so. But when I drop it by Mr. So and so, Mr. So and so say, "Oh yeah, Kenny, how you doing? I have a thing here. Boom, boom, boom. Bring this Granny Poem, Pomelia was her name. Bring this for Granny Poem and so on." I refer to that as organic socialism, if ever you want to use a ism, right? And that is something that's in our DNA, and it's inherent, and we understand that, right? And people don't need a class, people don't need lessons, and people don't need education to practice that. because out of the womb you grow up and you see your grandmother doing it, right? You see, when you see your grandmother break a bread and give the neighbor half, and when you see somebody bring a cup of sugar and so on, that's all the ism you need, you know. So I think that to summarize, I think that lessons learned, we've moved on, and what we have to understand is that ultimately you have to listen to the people, understand what the people want, and you can't twist the people's arm into what you think they want. So you know, that's it in a nutshell.
I know that's a very emotional period for a number of people, you yourself and others, I know, Canadian friends. But you touched on something earlier that I want to go back on, because it's critical to know that in your early period, 76, 77, 78, you had St. Paul following you. Massive people en masse coming to the stadium to root for Turkey, right? We have a Calypso scene now that is depleted of that kind of participation and crowd. What has happened?
Well, for one thing, back in my day, he didn't have much entertainment other than the Calypso tent. So you know, it wasn't like you're gonna say, well, let me stay home and watch a Netflix movie, or let me go on the phone and Mako Facebook. You know, it was the Calypso tent is here, and that was the event. You know, it's just like when I was growing up, I was a member of two organizations, the CYO, Catholic Youth Organization, and the AYPA, Anglican Young People's Association. I was in both of them. I don't know if that's a contradiction, but I was in both. Because my mother was Catholic, my grandmother was Anglican, so and then my mother's friend was Berean, so whoever pulled me first, I was there. So, but the thing is that every moonlight, every time the moon, like, we used to have moonlight picnic. And we used to hire 2-3 buses, you know. I remember Caban Stewart, may he rest in peace. We used to hire his bus, a couple other buses. And we would fill these buses of people, we make rum punch, Pelao, and whatever, and so on. We go down to BBC beach, and we spend the night down there because it's moonlight. Now, you try to pull that nowadays, a guy can tell you, well, I have an online course at 9, I can't go. Another guy can say, boy, you know, FIFA Club World Cup, I ain't going. Another guy can say, you know, and so on and so on. So I think that, I think that nowadays you have a plethora of distractions. Okay? Back in the day, that was the single biggest event. Calypso tent. And you have people in the village who, logistically, they can't get out of the village anyway. They have no transport. They have nothing else to do. So the Calypso tent was a great respite. It's either that or the rum shop and go home. I mean, what else are you gonna do? So those things have to be factored. I mean, and it's good and it's bad. Time moves on. I mean, I'm able to sit down here and enjoy a Calypso tent in the looks, right from where I'm sitting right here. Yeah. And yes, I do make a contribution. I do donate. So, but you know, it's one of those things. You know, time moves on and things change and so on. You know, but I value the days. But then again, too, you know, I think St. Paul's has grown. By this time, St. Paul's has grown used to royalty, because we had Smokey after, we had a king after in Smokey. And we had big acts like Japs and Dash and so on. So I think I was probably the first artist to quote unquote raise our nose, you know. So, right. Yeah. But I think St. Paul's is used to celebrities right now. You know, Comancheros has won a number of
Panorama, yes, indeed,
Fun fact, I wrote the first winning song for Comancheros. Panorama, yeah. Because they've been knocking on the door for a long time.
Yeah, they did. At one time, Comancheros they were stuck at third, and they just couldn't move from there. And eventually,
the year they won, two things I remember. I remember meeting Clarkey, James Clarkson, I have greatest respect for, in tongue, and he said, "Boy, you stand a chance this year, you know." And my response was that if Clarkey says so, you know, I'm honored because I'm nowhere in his league, you know. But the night in Queen's Park, I'm not saying stadium, I'm saying Queen's Park, because we want to keep context. When Comancheros performed, and Tiloti came over, and Tiloti hugged me and said, "All right, you win tonight." Now, I don't really know Pan. When I say I don't know Pan, I am not au fait with the intricacies and the nuances of Pan.
Yeah.
I really can't tell you who comes first and who comes second. Okay? When fellas start telling you about, but the tenors gonna come up a little bit and so on. Dude, all I know is I had 2 drinks and they play. I can tell you if a band busts. But I cannot. I don't have the ability to get into the nuance, you know.
Yeah, it's a. I mean, I love to hear live Pan, but when you hear people talking about this and that, for me I have absolutely no clue what they're talking about. But I love live Pan. You know,
I'm not in that league. Listen. In 1984, I went. I was supposed to play Panorama in 1984. And then after about 5 nights in the tent, I called Cess. I said, "Cess, watch." They was playing Sparrow back, and I was playing a tenor pan. That's my part, right? After about 5 nights, I said, "Cess, here what happened." That was the same year I was also going for Calypso King, 1984. I said, "Cess, if I go and sing for King and I mess up, it's me alone. If I come and play for Comancheros and I mess up,
everybody."
I say, "Look your pad sticks, I gone."
But let me.
You think it easy to explain the whole pan side that you mess up?
But Taki, let me ask you, because time goes by so quick and we're already getting close to wrap up. I mean, from from the time you started and by the way, someone is asking on YouTube, what year you actually started singing.
That would have been in GBSS. You mean, was supposed to actually start thinking I could sing?
Yeah.
which is a slightly different question. That was in GBSS when me and Team 4 was playing around with the chukong with the. That would have been 1974.
74. All right. Okay. All right.
As a kid in GBSS, yes.
Right. So.
But the first serious time, the first time I played with musical accompaniment was in 1975 in GBSS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. But looking back now, let's say from 76, when you actually, realize, look, I'm going to be on the big stage with the guys, the Darky and the Defender and the Ghost Spo and all of these guys. And I remember it so well as a little fella because it was different. And you heard this calypsos that stuck with you. King from Hell and Ghost Spo singing Cuddy was the cow and Mr. Don was the bow wow wow and all of these kind of things.
Highway in Granite.
And it has remained with me all these years, clear as day. Looking back at it then and where we are today with Calypso in particular, what are your thoughts? How much have we progressed? And I'm not just talking here about music. I'm talking about the development of the art form, composing and how artists deliver. And we've seen a lot of young guys, new artists come on from your time. So we had people like Smokey that followed, then we had the Ajamos, and then we've seen the rise of like Black Wizard and Praying Mantis and then Scholar and all of these guys. But what's your thought on that movement from 76 come up?
I think that in my period, topics were more abstract and wider. So you had the range, the spectrum of topics went from international, world politics, and it went right across to the absurd. I think that there was a lot more creativity and let me say, I'm not just saying creativity with a full stop, creativity based on the happenings of the time. Obviously, music nowadays is it. We didn't have the kind of musical accompaniment that people have now. But nowadays, I feel that people write more in a narrow sort of scope, a narrower spectrum. Everybody tries to write a political song, or a song attacking something or somebody else. I don't find a lot of people going into abstract creativity, but what I do find is that even though a lot of people are writing political songs, they're very creative. I mean, I hear Calypso from that lady from Garaku, and she starts off, she's saying, Beryl, she hurt her knee, and now she's saying, I can't stand up to this and I can't stand up to that. And that is, I can't remember her name.
That's Chanda? Is it Chanda?
She sang with up in Granville there.
Kaiso Bads, yeah, maybe. I think it's Chanda.
Yeah.
I think that probably Chanda. Yeah.
But I shake my head at the creativity. I mean, you look at we have not lost creativity, let me tell you. You look at Scholar They Want to Bull, or you look at The King is Innocent, or there's another one. There's a couple more, And
yeah, there are quite a few of them, yes.
The tagline. So what I'm saying is that we part for the course given eras, because what we have to be careful about is when we comparing eras, we have to also compare circumstances. And that's something I find people, I don't ever want to fall into that trap to say, this was better than then, or that was better. It annoys me, even like when I hear people talk about them children nowadays do things. They're only on the tablet. And I was like, well, you know what? If they're not on that tablet and they sitting down listening to Nancy's story, they won't get left. They have to be on that tablet. What matters is what they're doing on that tablet. You see? So that again, because I work in IT, it actually annoys me when I hear people say these children, they're only on the tablet. But which is not to say that there's any substitute for the parents' upbringing, but it depends on what they're doing on the tablet. So everything has context and so on. We have really, talk about music nowadays. We can see that kind of music.
Oh yeah, music, yeah.
We were back in the chukong. But then to something interesting is that the pace, the beat per minute, has changed dramatically. Because I remember dancing in Port of Spain to Etel as a road march. Do something.
Not anymore.
And that was road march. Etel was road march. In them days, you had Eli Matt and the GI Brass and them fellas up the road. And so on. And down the lower islands used to call it donkey gallop. Okay? The first time in Grenada, we used to dance on Carnival Day. They play in Sila Mass and thing. You hug up, right? And you're drifting across the road. Plung, 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 plung. I went up Antigua with short shirt and them. The year he did Tourist Lego 77, I think. 77. I went up there and saw
77, some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was when he had Tourist Lego and what's his name had Dawn of a Beautiful Day, Swallow had
Swallow.
Ba 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 of a new day, ba da ba da ba, and so on. And I leave Grenada with my, hug up, and you're drifting left and you're drifting right, and so on. I go Antigua, going down Market Street. Going down Market Street, you had a whole girl from behind her. Watch that.
Different taste. Yeah.
Going down Market Street, you need a Gatorade every block, you know.
Well, no, you're right. It has changed. It has changed a lot. I mean, the beat when you listen. I mean, for example, in the olden days, like with the March Gras, you had this first rung slow song, and the second rung was what took you to Juve. Now and you kind of got a sense of which songs might go on to win Road March. Now it's a different kind of thing. You know, sometimes the road match song is not even fit yet in a competition. It just so it has changed.
I think people like Chalk Dust and a couple others, they broke that trend in Trinidad by doing two social commentaries in the first round and second round. I think Chalk Dust is one of them that broke it. And Chalk Dust is my mentor. He's actually the one that got me to Trinidad. He's the one that, so all respect to him. I did a song called Black Child, and he was up here and he heard the song and he says that song could work in Trinidad. So he went back and he spoke to
Martino.
To Monroe, William Monroe.
All right.
And then he called me from Trinidad. No, we didn't have WhatsApp in them days. So he called me from Trinidad and he said to me, look, Monroe say, if you come to Trinidad on your own and you have a place to stay, we go try you out. Right? So it wasn't certain. Yeah. He said, fly down to Trinidad, get your own place to stay, show up to rehearsal, and if we like you, we'll keep you. The band was Old Rodney and Friends. Yes. So I hop a plane. My family was in Point Commander. I actually had grown up in Trinidad as a child, so I have good roots on this. So so I hopped the plane and I went down. They tell me how to get there. I end up in Frederick Street. I walk up the Green Corner. I take a cab. I go down to Point Commander. And Smiley and Singing Francine, they took me up to rehearsal because they lived on that side. They took me up to rehearsal. And when I rehearsed, when I did Black Child, that was my single act. I just one song. When I did that, them fellas say, okay, we'll keep him. So here's a quick thing. When they're playing in places like UE, your boy getting an encore, right?
Yeah.
Good. Because the encore, I bad him for the spin. One night, the tent going in Sangre Candy. Chalky tell me, he say, Turks, don't go. I'm not making this up. He said, Turks, take the night off. Don't perform in Sangre Candy. I said, why? He said, there are no time for you in Sangre Candy.
Actually, Turkey, I don't know if it's coincidence or whatever it is, but as you just before you mentioned Black Child, a question came up. Someone is asking, where can I hear Black Child?
No, in
the YouTube chat.
It should be on YouTube, if not,
I do have it. Yes, I do have it. I do have it. But guys, I mean, Turkey, definitely you had to come back on the program because we out of time. We ain't talk nothing yet because you're still performing, you're still doing stuff. We know you're gonna be here next year for the 20th anniversary of Legends in Concert. So there's a lot more to talk about.
With new material.
With new material too. So we out of time, so let me give you a minute just to wrap up, and say anything that you want to say.
Well, I take over your whole show.
But that was the whole idea. But that was the plan. You haven't finished yet. So.
No, I always thank the people of St. Paul's because that's where it started. I always thank the people of St. Paul's because and the reason is because in those that pivotal trial in 1976, if it didn't work out, it would have ended right there, because I wasn't going to go forward. I remember the first time I went on the stage in the old Bandung, and people were there with sort of skeptical, like this quiet little boy walking up and down, he wanted to sing, he put the mic in front of him. But, one of the things I learned then and I learned up to this day is that anytime you take up a microphone, be convincing. You see those first 30 seconds? It's very important for the band and the artist.
Mm-hmm.
You see those first 30 seconds? You see, that's your calling card. You see when a band start on cue and on time, and you have a good microphone, well balanced, and you get that first line out, you become
That's
Superman.
You're going.
You become Superman. Yes. So I just want to thank everyone who believe in me, and I'm not the best at anything, but I try my best at everything, and I will continue to. And I believe I still have a lot to offer. And just thanks.
Definitely.
Yeah. Val, yeah.
It frees a bit. Yeah. Well, it was great having to. He is definitely a good storyteller.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So that we are able to trace a number of things that I'm sure that a number of countrymen have never heard before from him.
That's my wrap up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was good. So that thanks, Turkey, for a wonderful evening of discussion. And we definitely would have you back at some future time, Yeah.
Oh, most definitely. Turkey, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much for being on the program with us. We're looking forward to having you back because we know there's so much more to talk about, to chat about, to share. So we're looking forward to that. Val, of course, as always with me. Thank you so very much. And next Wednesday we continue our Kaiso Talk. We're getting close to, I think this weekend is the preliminary round of competition for the Groovy, and then the following weekend we start the judging of the tents for the Calypso competition.
Yes, and come the carnival season in Grenada.
Yeah.
It's eating up.
The end of the month, 25th, 27th, the semi-final round, and then of course Carnival Monday, Tuesday, the March or whatever, and then after that we get back to our normal lives. Yes.
So before we go, Turkey, have you gotten any royalties for Spice Mass?
No, that's another conversation. Ironically, I'm a member of PRS, and I got payments from as far as Sweden, Switzerland, and other places for other songs.
Mm-hmm.
But Spice Mass, I don't know.
Okay, I didn't want to answer it.
No. Actually, I'm glad you asked because let me tell you something. It actually took Legends in Concert to remind them that it was Turkey who coined the phrase Spice Mass in 1992. After that, after we reminded them, then they call him now.
Yeah. Well, it's my gift to Grenada. It's one of those gifts that gives eternal intangible rewards, just to me and my children and everything. And the thing is too that I grew up in an era when it really wasn't about the money. Listen, the first time I won Krong, the Krong was $500, $500 EC. You're laughing.
We just opened a serious topic, but we'll
I know we have to go. We can start off with that one next time.
Definitely. So guys, thank you so very much. All the best, folks. Thank you for listening. Hey, we'll be back next week with more Kaiso Talk. Do have a good night. All the best. Yes, indeed.